Hi, welcome everyone to the ArtMinded Roundtable. I want to thank you so much for being here. And I just want to also thank our audience members who I know will be coming in probably in the next few minutes, but I want to go ahead and get started to be mindful of everyone's time. So my name is Dana Wood. I am the founder of Integrative Counsel, where we really enjoy bringing creative out-of-the-box thinking along with solid scientific research to our community and our clients so they get the best of both worlds. And so I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to have our panelists here today. I'm so excited to introduce all of you. And I'm going to do that in just a moment. Before, I want to take just a minute to share with everyone why I think the arts are vital. Not only vital for individuals, but also collectively as a society. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how the arts can really begin to move the needle around mental health specifically. And so I know I'm speaking to the choir when I say this, but the arts are essential and they're part of what makes us human, and all humans are creative. It's hardwired into us because our ancestors had to be creative in order to survive. And so even though many adults today may not consider themselves creative because they don't consider themselves a good painter or drawer, that's an absolute misnomer. And I think until we begin to correct this, there's going to be this real disadvantage for humanity, because in my personal belief, and based on some brain science, which I get really excited about, but I will not do that here today, why the arts and creativity are so essential is because it really begins to help us work from an integrated brain. And an integrated brain is what I believe is going to be required to begin to shift some of our real societal issues that are facing us at this time. And so the arts allow us to begin to remember what matters most. That helps us provide an expanded vantage or perspective. It also, again, from that integrated brain place, allows us to begin to think more collectively rather than in our survival brain, essentially. And so this is why I felt it so important to talk about arts around May Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we're going to dive right in, and I would like to introduce our first panelist, Jasmine Parker. So Jasmine Parker is a registered art therapist. She's also a registered mental health counselor, intern, and a certified trauma-informed art therapist. And she does something so cool for our community. I hope I don't know if you have like a picture you can show us, but I can't wait for her to talk more about how she impacts the community through her good work. Jasmine, go ahead and dive in.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So one of the things that that Dana is referring to, I am a mobile art therapist. And so I make it a point to go to my clients, to see my clients in spaces that are suited for them, whether it's their home, whether it's at a park, just whatever works for them. And so I have a mobile art studio that I actually hook up to the back of my truck, and I bring the whole entire studio with me, and we actually engage in their sessions within the studio. And so I work with all ages, but I predominantly work with adolescents. And so they get super excited about the art studio because it's like, I have my own personal studio. Like I can, create art in a space that's just for me. And yeah, so they absolutely love it. And so that's kind of how I bring myself to this world. And that's how I kind of create with my clients. We co-create in the space. I let them know that it's their studio so they can just, whatever it is that makes them feel comfortable, whatever it allows them to be able to express themselves. So sometimes we'll have music going, or, if there's a great space outside of the studio, we can create art outside of the space, just whatever works for them. And the question that you had presented to us, I wrote something down just because I wanted to kind of put my thoughts on paper. So I just kind of want to share what I wrote about just art and our mental health and just kind of the impact that art really does have. Our art and creativity, kind of like you were also saying, Dana, it's just a very innate part of us as humans. It's our first form of communication. It's how we kind of express ourselves to the world. Children get really excited when you give them a piece of paper and a crayon and markers and paint. And it really is how we first learn to express ourselves and how we learn to communicate. And it really does allow the things that are under the surface to come to the surface, things that need to be expressed. Oftentimes we kind of get in our own way, we kind of get in our own thoughts, we get in our head too much, and it can kind of hinder our creative process. But when we just allow what needs to come up to the surface, it will express ourselves. We just need to make space for it. And so I think art really does, just creates that safe space for us to be able to express ourselves, to explore, to try to understand whether it's ourselves or others. It helps us to boost our confidence. It allows us to engage and to connect with ourselves, with the world around us, our local community, our communities at large. It also helps us to build resiliency. It helps us to become more resilient, whether emotionally, whether it's just through our strength. Art really does create space for us to be able to do that. It helps us to explore and understand ourselves on a more personal level, but it also helps us to understand our relationships with others and the people that are in our lives. And it just kind of creates a space where, I always tell people sometimes words just aren't enough. Words just generally don't do justice for what it is that we are experiencing. And so it gives us another way to be able to showcase what it is that we've experienced, what stories we want to tell the world without having to rely solely on words to communicate those things. And so I think art really just kind of allows us to know ourselves and understand ourselves, but also how we fit within the world. It allows us to have our own voice. It allows us to be seen, to be heard, to be validated. And it just allows us to be who we authentically are without having to apologize. In my space as an art therapist, it's a little different than the traditional art world because we're not product oriented, we are process oriented. And so a lot of times people will be like, oh, but I'm not good at art. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't matter. Like, that's not what we're here for. We're here about the process and what you can learn about yourself. And so we just really create space for all art, regardless if it's considered good. Because sometimes our experiences isn't pretty. I tell my clients a lot, what we go through is not sunshines and rainbows all the time. So our art doesn't have to be that either. So that's my thoughts on those questions. I hope I didn't talk too much, but
Oh, that was so beautiful, Jasmine. And there's so many points that you mentioned, but one of the ones that feels most important, especially about your unique way of bringing arts to community, is the way that you do make it accessible. You take away so many barriers by hooking up your art studio to the back of your truck. You guys, it is so cool looking. We should show a picture of it if possible, because I'm like, I want to go make art in that. It looks like such a safe place. And I loved what you said about our art doesn't have to be sunshine and rainbows also, because that's often not what we are all going through. And the art really has the ability to access that in a way that can be safe and contained. And thank you. I just want to say thank you for how you share your gifts with the community. I hope there can be many types of ways the community can begin to access the arts again.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And how can people learn more about you and reach you?
Yes, so my website is www.ltyart.com. And so people can connect with me there. They can schedule a consultation where they will have my time, my undivided attention, where we can sit and explore and talk about what their needs are. You can also find me on Instagram, which is same thing, LTY_art_TES, where I share some really great like art exercises and just all things art and mental health related as well. So people can find me there, or they can also give me a call at 321-837-9784.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll make sure to, in the replay, we'll make sure to also add all of that information. I know Cassie just had to go back out and come back in order because she wants to share some of the images that she found.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thank you.
All right. I'm so happy, Dion, that you are here. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about what you're going to share. So I want to just start by Dion and I have been in a peer supervision group together now for years. And I really do look up to you and consider you an absolute mentor. And I have been like blessed to witness your progression over the years because it is an example. And so Dion is a psychologist and she's worked a lot with positive psychology and even wrote a book called The Happy Life Toolkit, Life Skills and Wisdom from a Down-to-Earth Psychologist. She has over 30 years of experience and is now also really transitioning her time to be a full-time. Oh yeah, there's the book. There's the book. It's a really good read, like totally, again, accessible, really fun drawings.
With drawings in there. So, yeah.
And yes, and now you're spending more and more time working in your personal art. And so, yeah, I can't wait to hear what you have to share with the audience today, Dion.
Thank you, Dana. And Jasmine, that was between the two of you. I feel like you've already said everything academic. So I'm going to go down the personal road here and talk about, what art is for me. My artistic life, my creative life, has not been part of my work as a psychologist. I don't do art therapy or expressive art therapy. I will take a client's creativity and use that as, homework assignments. So if somebody's a writer, I'll say, let's make up a fairy tale about this thing and, rewrite your life story that way. I've found putting things in fairy tale language to be really powerful. If someone is a visual artist or a painter, I'll say, like this thing that we're grappling with, like paint it, go home and paint that, like that'll be your homework assignment. So, movement people, yoga people, all these things. The idea is if we in therapy are trying to find expression, Jasmine, you said it so well, trying to find this. Somebody had the quote of art is something inside me that needs to get outside of me, right? And I don't remember who said that, but as a therapist, we're kind of facilitating that same thing. We're facilitating the self-expression, and we're also, to Jasmine's point, it's not just self-expression for the sake of self-expression, although I think that that's fine. But there's something about it that usually has the secondary thing of connection with others. Is my experience universal? Is it something that you can relate to, good, bad, or ugly? And I think that that's kind of an additional aspect of not so much the creation of art, but what happens afterwards when we share it. For me, creating art, and then I'll just kind of tell you where I'm at professionally. I am like almost minutes now. I'm literally weeks away from retiring, and it's creating a lot of reflection about my career. And I see a lot of happy faces. None happier than mine. It's creating a lot of reflection about why I got into the field. If I could have done something else, like been an artist, for instance. I have about a zillion ways that I'm a creative person. And so, now that now that I'm done trying to save the world, I'm going to, my father was so sweet. I said to my dad, I said, like, enough with the saving the children. I want to do something really selfish, meaning make art. And he said, that's not selfish. He said, when people look at your art and think that it's beautiful, you're really doing something to uplift them. Which, you know, how great is my dad? And I have to say that I don't know that I would have been really seeing the value of doing something that was not a save the children thing if it wasn't for the fact that I'm living with an extraordinary artist that I'm married to. And so we've been together for more than 10 years. So I don't know, we can't remember our anniversary, but it's an amazing relationship. And so here's this guy, and we knew each other when we were in high school, that I've known for forever, who has only been an artist. That's it, only been an artist. And I would never say like that work is not as worthy as, you know, as us social workers and all of that. So, you know, the quote that I sent to Dana was something that I've come to believe over the years, you know, and it was something that I said to him one morning over coffee. And I said, you know, I teach people or help people learn how to live, but what you do is in the realm of why we should live. Right? Art and beauty and love and enjoyment. I'm Italian, so food, you know, like all of these things that we're here to enjoy start tapping into something, and joy becomes the operative word. And for me, creating art is it's joyful, it's playful, and it is not just sitting down and making the sculpture. I sculpt, but it's a way of seeing. And I think about that scene with, oh God, it was one of those Christmas movies. And Santa Claus is teaching the uptight little girl about having an imagination. And so, and I consider myself a surreal artist because my imagination has gone off the rails. And I see the world in a strange way, you know, sometimes, and put things together that you wouldn't think should be together. And I get a real kick out of it. I think that it's really fun. And I think, you know, speaking of that brain integration, I am playing on the side of my brain that is not where I go to work. I go to work, you know, in that left logical, like all that heart and all that empathy and frankly, it's noble, but it's heavy lifting for me. Right. You know, I think I've been on the verge of empathic burnout for 33 years. And so to be able to do something that is just fun, that is just goofy, you know, I'm making these, I don't have any to show you, but like I found these gourds in a barn and I'm turning them into these little fat ponies, and they're so cute. Their legs are this big and they got a little head and a tail and a big gourd for a body. So like stuff like that. And I think, you know, that is just looking at things, everybody looks at clouds and sees faces in them and all of that. That's an act of creativity, you know, whether you want to put it down on paper later or not. Your mind is creative, your mind is playing, your mind is breaking rules. You know, I got enough maverick in me that I kind of like breaking the rules. So I don't know, you know, at this point in the game, I'm just making art kind of for myself. I'm showing it to other people. It's in the library, and I guess folks get a kick out of looking at it. But I already see that it's kind of going to be something that will bridge into my community. And you know what happened yesterday when I showed up at the library was they told me how much people are getting a kick out of those gourd things. And one lady said, "Oh, I grow gourds. I wish I could make something like that." Well, guess what? I could teach you how to do that. And so here comes my community shtick. Check back with me in about 6 months, because I'll be teaching the children, you know, how to make gourd ponies and having a good time with that. But it's a different spirit, you know. It's you know, I won't be doing it to save the children, which again for me is heavy. I'll be doing it because we all need to have some fun, and you know, and there's a lightness to it. So All right, I hope I didn't blab too long, but anyway, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Dion. That was beautiful. And what an amazing reminder that we get to have fun and be playful and be joyful, and art helps us do that. And again, in my opinion, the more of us that do that more often, the better our world is going to be. It doesn't always have to be about, and especially speaking to therapists and psychologists, about having to be saviors to others. We get to start by having fun and joy with ourselves as well. So thank you for that reminder.
And end up being a savior to yourself, right?
Exactly, right? And isn't that where it begins?
Yeah. Making art's going to create one very happy person in this world.
And if we can have more of those, right? Thank you. Jessie, I am really grateful, thankful that you're here. I have heard about you and your work for years. And so the fact that you're here, it's kind of like movie star, like, oh, Jessie, like, and so let me more formally introduce you. Jessie has been a marketing and nonprofit professional for 20 plus years, and really serving youth and marginalized populations. And probably the St. Pete community, at least, knows you through your Girls Rock St. Pete, which you're the co-director of. Yeah, so please share more.
No, I don't even know why I'm here. Everything that y'all just said was so great. I'm just like, what you said, that sounds wonderful. I have been writing copious notes, and I cannot wait to align with each of you, because I just feel like we're living such simpatico sort of ethos right now with how important art is becoming, and seemingly more and more, for helping us figure out how to navigate all of the mental health issues that have always been there, of course, but the nuance is so different with all the new technology and all the new challenges that we're faced with. So I thank you so much for having me, and I'm so inspired by what has already been shared. And I honestly, so many of the points that I wanted to make, Jasmine, you just tore through all of those, which is great. Thank you. So I'm going to try not to duplicate what has already been discussed, but through the Girls Rock St. Pete program, what I love so much about this, I keep trying to escape the nonprofit world, and I keep being drawn back to it because I fall in love with these programs, because they are truly ways to solve some of our problems. And that can be large scale and also like individual. But what I love so much about the model at Girls Rock St. Pete is that we're really building platforms for other people to shine. And so when I talk to people, especially like grown-ups, about Girls Rock, almost every time I tell a woman about what Girls Rock is, they say that is the camp that I needed when I was a kid. And I'm like, great, it's not too late. Come on and be a part of this work, because it is just as much for the volunteers, honestly, as it is for the campers. And what I love about it is, from kind of a social justice perspective, that our generation, I'm just going to group us all together as a generation, are really making space and helping kids kind of navigate what they're going through with the support that we probably didn't have. I certainly didn't. And so there's something incredibly like radical, healing, love-based in that work. And of course, when you combine a super supportive atmosphere like Girls Rock, where we have, all of these beautiful, amazing volunteers just ready to serve, all sorts of beautiful things come out of these kids when you're engaged in fearless self-expression. It really allows you a way to reinvent yourself and a way for you to speak a new language, especially when verbal communication can be so limiting. And especially when socializing, like especially for myself, can be full of anxiety. So I think that art in general, whether it's music or poetry or whatever it is, making spaces for each other and ourselves to heal, and like Jasmine and Dion mentioned, to figure out new ways to interact with each other, really transcends a lot of the divisiveness, a lot of those things that separate us so that we can find some really beautiful common ground. And I think about that, this is random, but like, have you ever been to a Dolly Parton concert? It's like, there's no two people that are similar. I mean, you've got every contingency represented at like a Dolly Parton show because it's the music that transcends. Would we get along in a political arena? Probably not. But what's important is that it brings us all together. And then something that Jasmine mentioned, the work specifically with Girls Rock is about building resiliency. It's about creating safe spaces where, specifically for us, girls and gender expansive youth, have a place where they can mess up. That it is about the process and not about the product, that they're free to like, here's some drumsticks and some drums you've never played before, no problem. Let's mess up together, because the faster that we learn how to mess up and make mistakes and take up that space unapologetically and just keep going, that's the foundation for building confidence, right? So I think a lot of our youth and us, we just don't have a lot of spaces where we can just be like, well, I'm going to just completely mess up at this. And that's what Girls Rock Camp is for. We're not a school of rock. We're not trying to make rock stars out of these kids, although it does happen. More so, we are trying to give them the freedom to try on different hats and to play with that. So with regard to mental health, it's a really well-studied, the gender confidence collapse is a very well-studied phenomenon that occurs between elementary and middle school. And it's that time where girls stop raising their hands in class. So when we start elementary school, girls and boys generally have a similar level of confidence and play and resiliency. And then we start to see that break apart, where girls start to learn some really harmful habits like rumination and negative self-talk and harsh judgment of themselves and others, body dysmorphia. And what we're learning is that that's not just this phenomenon that happens in middle school that you survive. Those habits and behaviors stick with us into adulthood and affect, our confidence levels as women and the way that we interact with other women and the jobs that we go after. So, there's a lot in there to work with. So we're trying to make sure that that there's a place where girls can come together and have a safe space. And here in Pinellas, the stats are pretty grim. We've got 1 in 4 teenagers that have suicidal ideation or have attempted suicide. And, that's something that we really need to look at. And of course, boys and men need to be part of that conversation too. It just so happens that this is the safe space that I'm trying to make for girls that didn't have that, to kind of try and level out the playing field. So I'm super engaged and excited about the work. And one day I want to retire and become an artist myself. And so I'm just so excited to be here. I don't know if that totally answered the first question, but there's just so much to engage within our work. And, last year when we had camp, it was the first camp after COVID. And the significant difference in our kids was, we decided to have some mental health workers there for the camp. And because of course, we don't just teach music, we teach intersectional feminism, we teach social justice, environmental justice, body positivity. And so, we bring in experts to give kind of a holistic transformational experience for these campers. And man, did we give our mental health counselor a run for her money. She needs support. So we definitely want to make sure to put some more supports in there because our kids really need it. So I'm just so excited to be here and a part of this work, and you all are mentors to me in every capacity. So thank you for having me, and I'm super excited to work with y'all.
Thank you, Jessie. Wow, it really makes me want to be a camper or at least a volunteer at some point.
Come on down.
Who doesn't love Dolly Parton? And I love that you mentioned like at the concerts you see every type, and there is that commonality around music and how we can begin to divide or excuse me, bridge some of those divides through creative means is really inspiring. And you, I loved what you said about mistakes, like to have a place where you can make mistakes, but often in the arts, the mistakes actually end up being like our greatest masterpieces typically, right? Maybe that's in life too, just harder to see, you know? So again, thank you for what you're doing and for the gifts you're truly sharing with our community.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I want to introduce Jennifer Carey. So Jen and I go way back. We met in graduate school. We traveled and lived in Spain. We moved to New York City together. And so I am so grateful that we get to sort of like traverse this thing called life together. You are truly like a soul sister. And so Jen is a psychotherapist, an author, a speaker, as well as a retreat leader. And what she has created with the WOW stage, Weekend of Wonder, is so cool. It's a little bit like the Girls Rock Camp, but for adults. So I will let you share more about that, Jen.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, everyone. I have to echo, I think Jessie said it so beautifully about all of us being together and everybody saying something that you know, just there's the Venn diagram, right? And there's in the middle, there's all the things that are in common, like the connection and imagination and safe place. And so I feel like we're on a retreat together right now. So Dana knows, those of you who know me, I love mindfulness. And I know we don't have time for like a real deep mindfulness or meditation, but I would like to just do a real hot second one, if that's okay. So if everyone could right now just put their hand on their heart as comfortably as they can. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes, but you do not have to. Again, hot second meditation right now. But I'm just going to ask you, if you want to gently close your eyes and connect with your breath. Maybe just feel yourself supported right now on the chair that you're sitting on, just to kind of get to that quiet place within. And I want you to think about what you loved to do as a child, right? What was the thing that you loved to do? Was it coloring? Was it imagining? Was it singing, acting? Was it dancing? Just think of the thing that just brought you a tremendous amount of joy as a child, and just allow that to just be on your heart and your imagination in this moment. And now I want you to turn to something that may be similar, but may be different. And that is what you dreamed of doing as a child. So something that you always wanted to do as an adult. Maybe as a child, you imagined yourself as a psychologist or a counselor or a social worker. Or maybe you imagined being an artist, or maybe you imagined being a teacher. Whatever it is, just allow your heart to remember that dream in this moment. Maybe you've achieved it, maybe you haven't. There's no judgment. So just taking a big deep breath just to allow those two reflections to kind of settle in. And when you're ready, you can put your hand down and come back to this time together. I really want to dive into what I really thought, but I know I need to just talk about what we're talking about. So first of all, from that, I really do believe that what we love doing as children and what we dreamed of stays on our heart forever. And I believe that in tapping into that is tapping into our purpose. And I believe that our purpose is an antidepressant. And I believe that doing that helps us rise above any kind of darkness, any kind of stressor. So the WOW stage was kind of born out of a journey for me. That was my own mental health journey. So here I am, a psychotherapist during COVID. And as Dion was even mentioning, the compassion fatigue was like over the top. And I did get to a really dark place, probably the darkest place I've ever been in my life. And it was one of those things where I love the metaphor of like, you're at the bottom of the pool and you have to like push yourself back up. And what pushed myself back up and got me above water was going back to what I dreamed of doing as a child. And that was singing and that was performing. So I reconnected with these music coaches, Mick and Tess Pulver, and I just started working with them virtually. And as I worked with them, just some incredible things were born. And one was a podcast that I continue to do now. It's called Illuminating the Stories That Bind Us. And in this podcast, participants share a story that's holding them back, a story that's keeping them from living a fully expressed life. And so just in illuminating it and voicing it, that's powerful. But then we kick it up a notch by prescribing a song to them. So we use music, lyrics, hopefully they do movement as well with the song to help them break through that story. So that was kind of phase one of my own using the arts to help me heal and get beyond the darkness that I was feeling. Then the WOW stage. So the WOW stage became a culmination of both. The WOW stage, retreat-like festival. It was 3 days a year ago in Rockport, Massachusetts, and I hope to continue to do many, but basically the idea was that participants came and they would use art, movement, performing arts to help them illuminate a story that's binding them and then to break through it. So I acted as a subject, and we opened up with a cabaret where I sang the songs that were prescribed to me to help me break through my stories, and just allowed myself to be in that vulnerability, that connection, to be witnessed by an audience and supported, and just actually live the power of arts. And then participants were able to do the same. Participants were able to make art to help heal their inner child and to help work through various things that came up with their stories. And then people also wrote a song and then performed it with a live band. So that is kind of the WOW stage in a nutshell. And I mean, I feel like we could just spend this entire time talking about how imagination and play and music connects us, moves us, heals us beyond anything words could even capture and anything that words could even do. So I think that's it. I think that's it.
Thank you, Jen. And I got to be a participant in the WOW stage. And I did get to work through a limiting story that I'm still working through, and got to write a song and perform it, which was terrifying and exhilarating. And I'm like, I did it, you know? And it's still medicine for me. It's still working. It's magic. I can't wait to see the many WOW stages that are produced throughout the years, because it really, really is like this necessary ingredient that we often, at least many of the adults that I know, like lose aspects of ourselves. And I think the arts especially allow us to bring back all these neglected parts of self so we can be more whole again. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I want to just quickly ask Cassie, I know you maybe had an image you wanted to share. Did you find one that? Yes!
Oh, look at that.
Is that not awesome?
Isn't that so cool?
That's amazing. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. And we have a very brief, it's 5-minute, but it is, I think, a very important video clip, because it's how the St. Pete Arts Alliance and the many artists involved are creating art in a very public way to really impact mental health. And so we're going to cue up a video clip with Terry Marks. She's the CEO of the St. Petersburg Arts Alliance, and here it is.
Hi. Oh, Terry, thank you so much for being with us today. I am so excited to get to hear a bit more from you. So I know you hail from originally New York and also spent a lot of time in LA. And you get to bring sort of the wisdom of the arts of both coasts into your role as CEO with the St. Petersburg Arts Alliance. And so again, so honored that you're going to share a pre-recorded message with our ArtMinded panelists and audience, really about how the arts in their multiplicity of forms can impact mental health positively for individuals as well as collectively. And I know the St. Petersburg Arts Alliance just did an initiative around this topic, so I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and thank you for allowing me to be here, being here, even video. I appreciate it. And so the initiative is Murals in Mind, and this is not only a professional interest of mine, but a personal interest of mine, because personally in my family, I had a brother who suffered with mental illness and eventually took his own life. And so and I was 13 when that happened, and it was a period in time where it was so rare.
Yeah.
And there was so much shame around that. And I remember a friend of mine said to me, I understand that you're sad and you could be melancholy about that. She said, but what's the value of suffering? And so that was really powerful for me. And so it kind of made me an activist as far as mental health and bringing that topic to the fore. And so when I realized that there was an opportunity to use public art, murals, and to connect not only visual artists, but performing artists together through technology, I leaped at it. And it was an idea that just happened as ideas do organically. One morning I woke up, I kept thinking, people don't seem right. People are off. And it's kind of, and I know in your profession, you probably get that there's kind of an undercurrent of discomfort, and loneliness and a disconnectedness. And so we went to Eckerd College and we found a psychologist, Paige Dickinson, and she sat with us and we knew that we needed professional advice. We weren't going to select the 12 murals, kind of like the 12 apostles, without being vetted, because we wanted to make sure that the images, the colors, the context of the murals really supported better mental health. And so we learned through that. We learned that some of the images were not appropriate, some of the colors, sometimes the velocity of a mural. And so we got our 12 murals. And then we set out to understand what kind of performances we wanted to attach to those murals. So we have Laureate Muniz, who's our poet laureate of St. Pete. She wrote an amazing poem for the Blue Hour, which is kind of the iconic mural for Murals in Mind. But we went to the community, and there's a mural, Sunshine on My Mind, and we asked the community, what brings sunshine to your mind? We have an aquatic, it's called an aquatic forest. Perkins Elementary School did a steel drum band, and we had it animated. So when you see them playing the drum band and you're looking at the mural, there's actually fish floating in front of them like an aquatic forest. And I think there's almost an octopus there if you look at it. So it started, each of the murals became very individualized and special to us. And by no means it was, it's not therapy, but yes, therapeutic. And the idea is that 24/7 public art can be accessible to anyone. And it's, and I don't know, hopefully your audience identifies that there is a moment in your day when you may be feeling blue, or having some discomfort or dealing with a challenge. And for me, I look up and I see a dog. And then that's it. It changes. It's that shift that changes your perception. And I think that, what art does is it puts you in that moment. all of the mental health professionals listening out there, that all you are supported, that
Mm.
you are loved, that you are embraced. That
Thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again for being here.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Still on mute. So that was Terry. And again, really, really pleased, and it warms my heart that St. Pete is doing this type of work with public art spaces, and that they believe it's important, and putting money behind it and funding artists, not just visual artists, but there was dancers, and there was people who animate. I'm blanking on the word right now. Animators and musicians, etc., composers, that all got to create this really multimodal experience for people. And she mentioned that pause, right? If there can be that pause where we can begin to see things differently. And what I believe the arts can do so well, and this gets into a bit of a larger topic, but I'm going to mention it briefly, is like it can inspire awe. And when we feel that sense of awe, again, there's something larger than just us or our temporary emotion in that moment. And so I want to just take a moment to ask the panelists if there's anything else that feels important to share before we transition into answering questions from the audience. Yes, Dion.
I forgot to say how people could reach me.
Oh yes, please.
So
and your book and
my artist name, well, my book's on Amazon, and my website is still up as Dion Branchiglione, but my artist persona is Dion Leone, just the last part. So there's my gourd art. There's my I have a website for the art stuff. It's www.dionleone.com. And that's it. So
thank you.
And at the end of this webinar situation, everybody will get an email with a link to everyone's things and art and projects, and I'll put it in the YouTube description as well. So if you're watching this on YouTube, scroll down, follow these people, and subscribe while you're here.
Thank you, Cassie. All right. I do want to, we have a series of questions that were submitted, but I do want to offer Chris or Simone, if there's any questions that you want to pose to the panelists or anything you want to share, you're welcome to as well. All right. I'm going to go up and start with the first question. When it comes to mental illness, why do you think people focus less on art creativity than they do medicating people? I mean, this is a rather maybe large loaded question, but I'm curious if anyone feels like they have any insight on this specifically.
I can speak to it a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, Jasmine, go ahead.
That's okay, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was gonna say that early on in my career, I learned that for some people, I don't really know like the term for it, but I'm just gonna call it art hurt, in the sense that when we're children, right, people are encouraged to create, you know, and people don't discourage you. They don't tell you, oh, that doesn't look good, like you shouldn't do that. Like they're like, oh, it's so good, even if it's not. They're like, oh, it looks so good. And then at some point in time in our lives, that changes, and people start to kind of say, you're not that great at it. You should probably do something else, right? And so people who aren't considered good at art, they kind of start to disconnect from it, and so people stop associating with that side of themselves, and so it becomes less a part of who they are. And so, you know, as our society, I believe we, you know, because of our medical model, it's less of a wellness and it's more of a symptom management. So people just kind of have fallen into that, and they forget about that other side of themselves, that healing side, and they've disconnected from that creative side So I think they just kind of naturally don't consider it because of just the medical model. They just kind of naturally gravitate towards that. And so in my opinion, I think that that's why people tend to kind of lean more towards medicine and medication versus art, creativity, creative expression, and that type of healing. So that's my thoughts.
Thanks, Jasmine. Well said. Beautiful. Dion.
I'll tag on that just to do another aspect of it. It depends on what you mean by mental illness and mental health issues. So for something, for people that are functioning, that get the blues, or get stuck in ruminating, or some social anxiety or something along those lines, I think that art can be a very good prescription. If somebody's got full-blown schizophrenia, they better go the meds route, because I think if you break your leg, you can make art while you're healing, but somebody better do surgery on the leg. You know what I'm saying? So you got to kind of look at what is it that constitutes the illness, and have an appropriate medicine for it. But I also wanted to say that, Jasmine, you made a good point, and I think it probably ties in with Jesse's point about, my bet is that we lose our confidence as artists somewhere around that same age when, I forget what you called it, you fall off the shelf, like between like grade school and middle school, like something happens. And so creating art, if you're going to be a self-critic, is not a healing thing. That's an awful thing. So now you're beating yourself up about something else. So it's absolutely necessary to be in that mindset where you're okay making mistakes. And I find that people, and increasingly the younger generations, I think, have a very hard time with that idea of being okay with making mistakes. The perfectionism out there is endemic. So all these venues that you guys are doing, having stages and hearts and everything, and just creating spaces for that, what a wonderful thing to start to set people free. It's very cool.
And as a side note to that, I think that when I talk to my grandparents about kind of the way that their lives were, I think that generationally we're losing a lot of our communal art spaces. So just think of like my parents, like the grandparents, they went dancing every Friday night and they sang songs together, and there were a lot of community activities like that, where instead of, I don't know what we're doing now, but not that. So I think that even though you wouldn't necessarily think of that as art, it is in fact engaging in collaborative expression, right? And I think that there's all sorts of studies, Dana, and I'm so excited. I want to pick your brain so badly, but about, that singing does actually make you happier. Engaging in specific kinds of art really does connect you to that joy factor. And so I think that as we, I like to blame everything on technology, which is not true, but I think as we kind of get into these silos, and the technology can be a force for connectivity, but also can really silo us. And so I love some of these Renaissance groups, like, like choir and pub choir and different, and the dance communities that are kind of coming back, like community dances. And because I think that that's another great place to find connection through arts and healing. And I think that just is kind of lost a little bit generationally with us too. And I think it's harder to access arts, especially, it's one thing to go buy yourself, some paints and get to it. But I think a lot of people really, like myself, I love to collaborate. And so that can, you have to find the community, you have to find those groups and those spaces that are dedicating to make that space for you.
Thank you. We have another question. Thank you, Simone. How do you progress with creativity when mental health has compromised creativity? Yeah, that's a really, really good question.
I wonder if it's similar to what Dion was just saying. Has the mental, it depends, right? I guess we need clarification on how the mental health illness has I don't know what the right word is, dampered or impacted creativity. But if it's that critic part, right? Or if it's like Jasmine was saying, if it's that art hurt, then that exactly what we're saying, creating a safe and structured space where we ask the critic to sit aside, we have a non-judgment, have a judgment-free zone. And I know, Jesse, you were speaking about this with Girls Rock, just that permission to shine, that permission to make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. I think it would be all the work with that part, that critic or perfectionist or whatever part may be feeding the mental illness when it's in an extreme, when it's playing in an extreme role, and, taking advantage of these spaces that we're all speaking of that are safe and that really work on the agreements that it's okay. It's okay to be here. I always think about, you guys know, Jimmy Fallon has that's my jam thing, for like celebrities. Like, why aren't we doing that for like lay people? Like, who cares? Like celebrities, you've already like worked on it and got all the voice lessons from all the professionals. Like, we should all be just having that space where it's just about connection, and it's not about having some incredible talent or degree in it. And I really believe that in that liberation is the healing of whatever may be the block of the mental illness or the cognitive stories or anything like that.
Mhm.
I wanted to say like, amen, when you were speaking, Jen. Yes. Thank you. And Dion, there's a question specifically for you. What would be the first step to your approach? And so I don't know if this is specifically like, how did you allow yourself to become an artist, or with the gourds, or with the positive psychology in the toolkit? Maybe there could be clarification around that. What would be the first step to your approach?
Making art for me, and I've heard my husband say the same thing. Our studios are room back to back in our rooms. It's terrifying along the way. Sometimes you think, I can't do this. What am I going to do? I don't know what a horse's nose looks like, and just like, so there's going to be moments, and he talks about his paintings go through an ugly phase, right? They go through an ugly phase before they get beautiful. And by terrifying, I mean that there's a I can't do it. I bit off more than I can chew. And what am I doing? Who do I think I am? And like, you can go down that road. I'm pretty good with that. But I literally think I don't have the skills for this. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to cut a gourd, and you have to get over that, right? And it's again going back to that willingness to make mistakes and so forth. I'm going to say, like, the best way to start is to find yourself some supportive people that will encourage you. Some people that don't judge. Stay away from the folks that say, like, that's no good. Because our little fledgling egos are just like, we're walking on baby legs, So that's important. I think taking classes is a great way to get started. Most online schools and teachers and so forth are really well aware of people being stymied by their own criticism. There's books out there. The Artist's Way is a good one. Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain is pretty cool. But folks that talk about how to get out of your own way, right? You're already, I think, Dana, you said we're all already inherently creative. And it's just a matter of start to play in your mind. When I was a kid, we had that ugly wood paneling that they had back in the 1970s and the 60s. That shit was everywhere. And so it was in my bedroom. And when I was sick, I laid in bed and I looked at the paneling and I saw little faces in the paneling, right? And so exercising your imagination that way and, kind of making fun out of nothing. I think part of the problem with the phones is that you don't have to do that, right? So being bored whoever said you got to make space for it, right? Being bored, I think, is important. I think that you need some time and you need some space to be bored, because then your imagination starts to come up. Looking at things in a funny way. Stand-up comedy, I think, is very, very helpful, because you're going in this direction, and for it to be a good joke, all of a sudden you're over here. Well, that's that whole left brain, right brain kind of thing. And when we start to like break expectations, then the freedom emerges. It cracks out of that egg. So, for the question about the person, like, what if my mental illness is getting in my way? My first question back was, well, what are your expectations? Are you thinking you need to produce something? Like what can that be shift? Can that be, put in a different way? So I hope that was coherent. So be around some safe, encouraging people, whether it's a class or your friends, or hop on one of these ladies' buses, because I'm ready to go. And let your imagination run wild when there's no risk. My first gourd thing, I took a broken gourd. I was like, I'm going to experiment with this because I've got nothing to lose. Well, I just sold that sculpture yesterday. I named him Wabi Sabi. And so that is the concept of embracing your mistakes. Kintsugi is the concept of the broken bowl that you then mend with gold, and having that end result of the mended, broken part of ourselves, turning out to be one of our most beautiful, or one of our most, certainly our resilient selves. So, turning your mind, there's your cognitive behavior therapy, right? Let's just assign a different story to the mistakes that are going to be inevitable in whatever creative process.
Woo, well said. That was like very coherent. I was like, this could be a research article. Yeah. So much wealth of information there. I know we are just at time. I want to thank everyone. And I also want to just do a plug for Dion's husband's work. Jen and I were in New Orleans, and we walked in this gallery. I'm like, oh, I know that artist. I think he's one of the most incredible contemporary artists at this time. And the fact that he said he goes through a period where he feels his art is ugly. I'm like, what? So it's like, it is part of the process. That is the required, like, sort of dark night of the soul. Like, you will follow that arc in every creative pursuit, I believe. Yeah, this is Dion's husband's work. It's mind-blowing. We'll put a link to his as well. Yeah. Stephen Kenny, yes, thank you. I think, wasn't he part of the Dolly, like, he used to do things with the Dolly, etc. We don't have to get into all that because we are at time, but thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Chris and Simone, for being with us today too, and Dallas. So grateful for your presence here. Any final words before we end for today? Oh, this was so fun. Thank you, Jessie. Yes, it was fun for me too, at least. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dana and Integrative Counsel, for providing a space like this. And I loved listening and meeting everyone. And Dallas, Chris, and Simone, thank you for your energy. And I just hope this spreads. I hope people give themselves permission to just connect with their little artist selves.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for having me. I think the final thing I want to say is just kind of going back to what Dean was saying, is just trust the process. Like, you just never know what's going to happen. Just allow yourself to go through that process, and you'll be surprised by what shows up.
Well said. Thank you.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
everyone.